Shop the Sherwin-Williams Memorial Day sale and get 30% off paints and stains May 15th through the 28th. Whether you're refreshing your interior or exterior, we've got the colors to bring your vision to life. And with delivery, getting everything to your door is easier than ever. Shop online to have it delivered or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details. Delivery available on qualifying orders.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. They make it super simple. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with coverage options tailored to your choices. Plus, you'll see which discounts you may qualify for, like the online quote discount or savings for paying in full. In fact, 99% of Progressive Auto customers earn at least one discount. See if you could save when you switch to Progressive. You'll feel good about making a savvy choice. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little extra cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show, brought to you in association with Quimba. And one of the benefits of now being a part of the Bleav family is we can talk to our cousins who do many great podcasts focusing on each of the 32 NFL teams. And when I found out that the person who does Perfectville, Miami Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins podcast in the Bleav Network, was also a comedy writer who was one of my favorite genres as human beings, I said I had to talk to this man. So Sam Marcoux, who, as I was saying, is the host of Perfectville, a Miami Dolphins podcast, the Bleav Network, is joining us this evening. Sam, how are you?
I am doing fantastic, and I appreciate a fan of comedy such as yourselves. As somebody who works in that industry, who works in that business, I am not a fan of comedy. It is a job, but you have to have a sense of humor if you're going to root for the Miami Dolphins, if you're going to be a lifelong Miami Dolphin fan. If you don't have a sense of humor, you're not going to survive. So the two really go hand in glove, but I appreciate you having me here today. Thank you.
Yeah, that line did occur to me at some point earlier on. I was like, do you have to be I've said you would be a Dolphins fan? It's not too hard to start, but you've already laid out just the reality of being a Miami fan, certainly in this century anyway. I know obviously things were different in the in the 70s and 80s, back in the back when those jerseys were really iconic.
Yeah, back when I was not really alive. And, the only thing I could really hang my hat on these days from a modern day era is the fact that Ace Ventura was a pretty damn good movie with Jim Carrey, and the Miami Dolphins were involved with that. But the problem is we're not necessarily actors and movie makers. We're supposed to be a football team. So as good as that movie is, it's not exactly the legacy that I want to have as a Miami Dolphin fan.
Well, let's get into it then. Because, look, there's so much happening in the Dolphins. I think the biggest thing that happened, obviously, in the offseason is the replacement of Chris Greer being moved outside of the building. He was in situ as general manager for so long. And even though there was so much happening to change the quarterback, the deal given to Tua, Mike McDaniel given the confidence, and he stayed on to the end of the year. Why was that such a necessary change, do you feel, for the Dolphins? Or is it something you think most of us Dolphins fans should welcome?
No, it is something that was a long time coming. I mean, Chris Greer had been with the Miami Dolphins organization for close to 2 decades, if not 2 decades. He was the general manager for the last 10 years. Stephen Ross is loyal to a fault in many, many cases, and I think Chris Greer is exhibit A of that. This is a guy who probably should have been relieved of his duties well before when he left midseason last year. And it's not that Chris Greer is a bad general manager. It's not that he's a bad talent evaluator. He's made some really good draft picks. He's had some really good, intriguing trades. The problem is he didn't do enough to keep, in my opinion, he didn't do enough to keep his own talent, the folks that he drafted, to stay with the Miami Dolphins. The famous line was always, they have earned the right to test free agency, which was code for we're not going to pay that guy, even though he's outperformed his rookie contract, even though we're the ones who drafted him, even though they're the people that are culture setting right here. We're going to let them go ahead and leave, and we're going to go hire these mercenaries, people like Tyreek Hill, people like Jalen Ramsey, folks that are very talented individual athletes and football players, but didn't necessarily blend well into the culture of what the Miami Dolphins were trying to do. So he failed. He fell down when it came to establishing a winning culture. And ultimately, as the general manager, you are in charge of just about everything on the football side. So he fell down there. And I think famously, the big line that has really cooked him is the fact that about 2 years ago at a press conference, he nonchalantly and kind of chuckled and said, I think you guys are more worried about the offensive line than we are. Well, what happened? The offensive line fell apart, the quarterback got hurt, and the Miami Dolphins had a losing season. So I know what he was trying to say. He was trying to say he has confidence that with the guys that are in the room. But what came off is we're not worried about it. And then really the reality is they should have been worried about it because they weren't that good. So Chris Grier made a lot of mistakes, but ultimately it was time for him to move on and for somebody else to come into the room and have a new voice.
Yeah, the word mercenaries there is one you use there. And I think that's actually a great way of putting it, because we fans of other teams, and maybe this is kind of being the way being swayed by national media as well, or sort of seeing Miami as a place for, for the fun-loving boys and people to go. And it's almost, I feel like there's a seriousness which people don't attach with the Miami Dolphins, which isn't carried in other, isn't carried with the Heat or with the Florida Panthers, but with the Miami Dolphins, it seems like when they talk about the type of players who have come down, it's almost like, well, yeah, but they're playing football, but they're not really playing football, and that just doesn't help, like you're saying, to build the winning culture, which any organization wants to try and develop.
Yeah, look, Miami is known for the amount of distractions that Miami has, right? You can do just about anything and everything, legal or otherwise, in the great city of Miami, Florida. Again, it's also a community that people go to for vacation. It's a community that people retire to from other areas of the United States and the world. It is known just culturally as a place you go and visit, you hang out, you have a good time. The problem with that is it does permeate out through, and the distractions do become real for those football players that are playing 3 hours a day or 3 hours a week. And the rest of the time they're either at practice or they're on their own. So there's a lot of distractions, a lot of things that young men with a lot of money can get into in terms of cars, nightclubs, bars, restaurants, whatever it is. So you do need to have a strong hand, something that Don Shula, the coach for many, many decades in Miami, had, something that Jimmy Johnson, who replaced Don Shula, had. It's not lost on me that those are the last two guys that had any sort of success coaching in Miami. You need to have the right personality to run that organization, because there are so many bright lights, literally and figuratively, for these young men to come down and play. Plus, again, you're in Miami. You're going to go to the beach. You're going to go to the nightclubs. You're going to go hang out at Tootsie's from time to time. All of those things are going to happen.
Yeah, it is interesting. Well, let's talk about what's brought in. We talk about, snowbirds always seem to come down to that part of Florida. Like, there seems to be this Wisconsin migration over the course of the all season. Jeff Hafley has come in as the new head coach. We'll talk about Malik Willis, the quarterback, but then of course John Eric Sullivan, who was in Green Bay for over 20 years, has become the general manager there as well. Let's talk about Hafley in terms of his selection. Previous defensive coordinator at the Packers. I think he's got a quite clear coaching brain. But is this like what do Miami need right now? Because we look at some other teams around the league and you say, like, look at what the Patriots did. You got Vrabel, he was a culture guy. The Giants, they've got in Harbaugh, he was a culture guy. Are we looking for a culture guy now after having the Mike McDaniel era?
On some level, yes. I think you're looking for somebody who can come in and coach, right? You need somebody who's a very good teacher. Jeff Hafley is certainly that. He is a student of the game. He's been around this in many, many different iterations as a defensive backs coach, as a head coach in college. He was also the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. He knows what tough and grittiness is. So that was something that was missing from the flash of Mike McDaniel, the offensive genius, the schemer, the play caller. Now you have a guy who's done it in the cold. He's a guy who plays defense and wants to use defense to win games. They are looking to change the culture. And one of the ways they do that is, again, you get rid of and purge all those high price contracts. You get rid of the flash and you start drafting people and you start bringing people in that match the values that you are setting forth. And when you do that and then you keep your own, look at Devon Achane. They just signed him. That was not something that Chris Grier and the previous regime was doing. They were letting free agents walk. They signed a guy who was drafted by the team, who has established himself as a good player with a good work ethic, and they're rewarding him with a second contract and making him a very rich man. That's the culture that they're looking to set. That's what they're trying to get done and accomplished in Miami, the Green Bay way, if you will, where they keep their own, they have the right culture, they can establish the culture with those impressionable young draft picks that they have. You look at what they did. They brought in over 20 rookies between the people they drafted and the undrafted free agents that they signed during the draft weekend. Over 20 rookies, all have the potential to make this team on a 53-man roster. They are purging the ghosts of yesteryear in Miami and trying to establish and set up and stand up a brand new foundation for a brand new building that is the Miami Dolphins.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because Achan is quite clearly, somebody that I think the Dolphins are right to try put a deal on. He's the best guy in the offense. But then you look at the flip side of that and what happened with the Jalen Waddle trade and lead up to the draft. You could probably look at what they got in compensation from Denver, and you could see the logic behind it, especially considering just for various reasons the Dolphins haven't had too many first round picks in the last couple of years, so this draft probably carries an extra weight of importance. But what did you make of that Waddle trade when it came in? Was it surprising, a good move, bad move?
It's all of the above. It really is. It's one of those things where you can be happy and sad all at the same time. My 13-year-old daughter's favorite player is Jalen Waddle. The team she hates the most in the NFL is the Denver Broncos. So, of course, those two line up. So we're going to have ourselves an interesting week when they play the Broncos later this year. But look, Jalen Waddle's a terrific player. He's a guy that when he's on the field can catch the ball, make somebody miss, and then all of a sudden he's in the end zone. Any team will take Jalen Waddle on their team. There's not a team out there that would say no thank you to Jalen Waddle. He's a high character guy. He's a high work ethic. Nothing but praise for Jalen Waddle. However, Jalen Waddle is a guy who doesn't fit the prototype in terms of the type of wide receiver they are looking for going forward. He is a little bit undersized. Yes, he's very fast. He also is dinged up and banged up from time to time, and he is entering his physical prime. He's looking to be on a winner. He's looking to have success, and that is not what the Miami Dolphins are looking to do in 2026. Or what I should say is success looks different for the Miami Dolphins in 2026 than it does for Jalen Waddle. So he gets what he needs. He moves on. He gets to a team that's probably one piece away of making a serious Super Bowl run. He could be that piece. The Miami Dolphins get themselves another first-round draft pick, which they used on defense. Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, cornerback at thing that they desperately needed, and they go and rebuild a wide receiver room in the mold of what they're looking for. Big bodied, catch the ball at the height of the catch there. I mean, we're talking 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" type wide receivers, not 5'9", not 5'10". We're talking guys that can use their body to box out cornerbacks and go up and get the ball versus using precision and timing to go get the ball, hit their hands, and run. It's a completely different offensive philosophy for the Miami Dolphins now than it was prior to then. So you say that and you say, well, thank you, Jalen Waddle, for everything. Thank you for the memories. And I hope you get touchdowns in every single game next season, except for when you play against the Miami Dolphins.
Week 13, I think, in Denver as well. So that's going to be, could be a snowy one. Could be an interesting one to watch. Let's talk about the draft then. You touched on Chris Johnson coming in there. And I mentioned earlier, just the nature of the past few Dolphins draft. There's a lot more draft capital to work with. 6 players in the top 100, Caden Proctor and Chris Johnson in the first round. Give us a general overview on your feeling on this draft. Is this a rebuild draft, or is there maybe something that could give you quicker impact for the Dolphins this year?
Yeah, it's a rebuild draft. I mean, I think the coaches and the general managers are telling you the same thing, that, look, they need to reestablish who they are. They need to redefine what the Miami Dolphins brand of football is. And you do that by doing Heavy D and the Fat Boys, to borrow a reference from hip hop in the late 80s, early 90s U.S. culture. They went offensive line. It's hard to go wrong if you're investing in your offensive line. And when you invest in your offensive line, what you're really doing is you're investing in your quarterback. And in this case, you're investing in your running back, Devon Achane. You put Caden Proctor, and that massive human being, at left guard, which they've already said they're going to do, between Patrick Paul, an emerging left tackle, and Aaron Brewer, an all-pro center. All of a sudden, you have 60% of your offensive line troubles washed away, especially if Caden Proctor can keep the weight off, because the talent is there, the coachability is there, the personality is there. The only thing that's held him back was the fact that he got really, really fat in Alabama, but then he took all that weight off, and all of a sudden he's a first-round pick, 12th overall. Chris Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the silkiest, smoothest cornerbacks in this draft. There wasn't a lot of high-end cornerbacks in terms of draft capital this year. He was one of them. So they go ahead and trade Jalen Waddle. They trade up. They jump in front of the Buffalo Bills, their division rivals. They get Chris Johnson. Buffalo Bills all of a sudden trade out of the first round altogether. So not only do they get the guy that they wanted in Chris Johnson, but they also cock-blocked, if I could say, the Buffalo Bills from the guy that they apparently wanted, because they traded out immediately after that trade happened. So I was a little bit shocked at the Caden Proctor draft pick, simply because of the players and the way the draft fell to them at 11. You had Caleb Downs, talented safety out of Ohio State. You had Ruben Bain, homegrown guy, University of Miami, both areas of need for the Miami Dolphins. But what has come out since then, the Detroit Lions were desperately trying to trade up to get Caden Proctor, and eventually pulled their trade offer to the Baltimore Ravens off the table once Caden Proctor was chosen by the Miami Dolphins. So when you look at how other people were evaluating Caden Proctor, he went exactly where we expected him to go. The team fell in love with them. They had conviction. They wanted to build the offensive line. They told us they were going to go offensive line. And wouldn't you know it, that's the first thing they did. They're building from the inside out. Starts with the quarterback. They got Malik Willis. They go get an offensive lineman with the first overall pick. And then they go defense with Chris Johnson in the first round and then Jacob Rodriguez in the second round. Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan are writing down their game plan and then executing it flawlessly. Is it going to work? Time will tell. But they're doing what they say they're going to do, and that's all you can really ask for. Are they going to win more games than they lose this season? No, probably not. I would take the under if you're betting on FanDuel or anybody else. But you have to crack a few eggs in order to make an omelet, and we are clearly starting to crack some eggs and whip them into a frenzy right now. So 2027, 2028, better outlook in terms of results on the field. But this is a foundational change for the Miami Dolphins. It's pretty exciting to see.
It is, but I'm just looking at this at the schedule here. We'll touch on Malik Willis at the end of the show, but I'm just looking at the schedule here. Obviously, no primetime games. That's something you're disappointed in, or is that just hey, let's just keep the rebuild off national airwaves?
Look, I am in California, so I am as far away from Miami as you possibly can, which means when the Miami Dolphins play football, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, which means I can wake up, make coffee, yell at my dog for doing something that he shouldn't be doing, turn on the game and watch my Miami Dolphins, and then have the rest of the day to celebrate or be angry. It depends on whether I'm drinking Irish whiskey or American whiskey, depending on the outcome of the game. So I love the fact that there's consistency there. 11 of their games happen at the same time on Sunday every single week. That consistency, I think, helps them more than it hurts them. Traditionally speaking, the Miami Dolphins have not done well on primetime television, whether it's Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Wednesday Night Football, whatever day of the week that they put Miami Dolphins on primetime for everybody in the world to watch, they fall flat. Yeah. So let's take that off the table. I don't want to see them lose in prime time. I certainly don't want to see my friends see them lose in prime time, because then they text, they call, they tweet, and they make fun of me. And I don't need that type of pressure. So if we can hide them in the middle of 15 games, and they can just play and they know exactly what time it's going to be. They don't have to change their schedule. They don't have to adjust. They have no international games this year either, which is huge. They only have 2 West Coast games, and they're doing them week 1 and week 2 back to back. It's a pretty consistent schedule for a team and a structure that craves consistency in order to be successful. So I actually think this works to Miami's favor. Does it mean they're going to win more games than they would otherwise? Probably not, but I like the consistency for them.
I like your optimism, because when I saw that, I thought, Jesus, having to go to Vegas and San Francisco in the first couple of weeks, then you have to welcome the Chiefs, and then your only home games before the bye are the Chiefs and the Bengals. But I can see where you're coming from now, like, especially when, look, let's be fair about this, the way you've outlined it, the way a lot of people are looking at this, you're not thinking playoffs now, you're thinking build a culture now, playoffs next year, in which case then everything's kind of set.
Success looks different. It's a spectrum, and success for the Miami Dolphins is different in 2026 than it will be in 2027 and beyond. And people have to keep that in mind. The ultimate litmus test is if you win the Super Bowl, how many games you win. Yes, it would be great if the Miami Dolphins shocked the world and had double-digit wins and went into the playoffs and made some noise. That's not a realistic expectation. And anybody who's following this team who thinks they're going to do that is probably spending too much time in South Beach, Miami, doing all those distractions that I was talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, weightlifting and all that kind of stuff.
Like,
what else could you possibly be talking about?
It's pretty obvious.
Final thing, when you were talking about success as a spectrum, I think a lot of people are thinking as a free trade success when Malik Willis, who was one of the more highly touted quarterback prospects in this free trade, even though he was a backup in Green Bay last year, seemed to be a part of that sort of cheesehead revolution, which has come down to Miami. Give us your sense as to how he's settling in. We know as we're talking here, OTAs are on. Obviously, there's a new culture to set up on. He was quite vocal when the Jalen Waddle trade happened. Said, "Listen, I would love to play with him, but he's still got guys to work with." You've obviously was out of time to watch the tape on him as well. What can we expect, or what is right for us to expect from Malik Willis as a Miami Dolphin?
I would think, 17 straight wins and a Super Bowl appearance. No, I think Malik Willis, there's not a lot of tape on him. What he showed in Green Bay last season was somebody who is a leader, and I think that's important, especially from the quarterback position. He came in as a backup. He knew his quote-unquote role, and he did what he was supposed to do. This is a guy who is not as accurate as Tua Tagovailoa, but has an arm. This is a guy who can throw the ball 60 yards on a rope. This is a guy who can actually grab the ball and run with it, which is probably what he's going to be doing more often than Tua ever did. The number one rushing option for the Miami Dolphins is going to be Devon Achane. Number two is probably Malik Willis. The fact that he can actually create with his legs is something that the Miami Dolphins haven't had since Ryan Tannehill was their quarterback. So it's exciting to see how they utilize him in that regard. It's a short-term contract. They paid him a lot of money. It's like $22.5 million per year, but it's really a 2-year contract, which sets up the Miami Dolphins that if this experiment does not work, if he isn't the franchise quarterback that they think and hope he will be, they can go right back out and reinvest in the quarterback position relatively quickly as soon as they have money, which will start next year. So I like the gamble. It is a gamble. Let's not forget the fact that he doesn't have a lot of tape. He doesn't have a lot of success, quote unquote, within the NFL so far, but he's 26 years old. He's a guy that they know. He was the scout team quarterback for Jeff Hafley's defense in Green Bay last year. John Eric Sullivan knows who he is, and he seems to be a guy who understands the culture makeup of a team, especially from that Green Bay Packers organization for 2 decades. So if he likes him and Jeff Hafley likes him, until they give me a reason to not like him, I'm going to like him and root for him, especially as a fan of this team. So we'll see what happens. Is he going to be the MVP of the league? Probably not. But is he going to be the worst quarterback in the league? No, not when the Arizona Cardinals still exist.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, yeah, no, like they had the worst, they had the worst schedule release video, the worst quarterback room, just
everything.
Yeah, no,
they're having a holdout contract dispute with their backup quarterback, who's like, if I'm going to play behind this line, you're going to pay me more. So I think I'm Team Jacoby Brissett when it comes to the Cardinals. So
yeah, fair enough. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. While you're not rubbing shoulders with SNL alumni and your exciting work as a comedy writer and stand-up comedian, you were doing some great work on the Miami Dolphins. So for any listeners who are interested in following your work, where can they find you?
They can find me on the Bleav Network here. Just check out Perfectville. You can type in Perfectville. You'll find we just released a new episode today. We come out weekly with episodes. It's usually me ranting and raving and using a lot of swear words that I shouldn't be using, but you can find me there. If you want to find me on stage, you're just going to have to find me on stage. I'm on a hiatus right now through the summer, and then I'll come back and I'll announce those dates at a later time. But for right now, you can check out welcometoperfectville.com, get all of your beautiful, lovely Miami Dolphins merchandise. And then if you don't want to spend some money, and I get it, times are tough, you can just listen to the podcast. It's free. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on the internet. So just type in Perfectville. You'll see this mug. I'm not going to say ugly. I'm not going to say beautiful. It's just a mug, an average looking dude talking about the Miami Dolphins. And if that's your flavor of tea, then feel free to sip.
Well, listen, there's a lot of Dolphins fans. We noticed we've a lot. We actually seem to have a pretty decent listenership in Florida, especially. And there's a lot of Dolphins fans inside the Atlantic, so I'm sure many of them will go and check out. But for now, Sam Marcoux, thank you very much for taking the time out to join us on the Irish NFL Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Phins up.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.